there's a verse in Revelations that talks about how they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And so today we're honoring the Lord through our testimony and in the moments where we saw him come in and just do something wild. So,
and it's our belief, exactly like Christine said, quoting that verse in Revelation, that we give honor to God and we give thanks to God, but it's also the way that we overcome the enemy is through our testimony about what the Lord has done. So this is a really rich, cool opportunity, but it's also not just a cute thing. It is tremendously powerful in, the heavenly realms, what we're participating in this morning. So we encourage you to have that mindset as you approach, to listen. Like Christine said, if you have stories you would like to share on the chats so that others can read those while we're sharing some on screen, please do join us. But we do get the opportunity to share testimony. We're going to be reflecting on some stories and we'll have different readers. The really cool thing about this is we have stories from each of the regions, as well as some shorter just accomplishments, things that happened this year. And we have people from all of the teams who will be reading them. And it'll be sort of an interesting way of all participating together and reflecting what the Lord has done. So you'll hear from people from different teams. They won't necessarily be sharing their own stories, though. They'll be sharing stories that came from everyone, really. So it's sort of a cool opportunity for us to participate together as one body. So like Christine said, we also have some stories which we'll highlight that are part of sort of the last 20 years and some of our key origin stories. Then the rest of the stories will all be from this last year.
So our first reader.
All right, so we're going to kick things off in a great way. We're very blessed to have a global board member, Roger Hyatt, and he will be starting us off.
Roger, we're ready whenever you are.
I'm sorry, I was knocked off there for a few minutes. I had to get back on. I think I'm back on now.
Great.
This last year, we've celebrated 20 years of Boy with a Ball in San Antonio and all of the lives that it has impacted. And we're looking forward to the next 20 years. In Costa Rica, the amazing work of virtual tutoring made possible by university volunteers and funding from Intel Corporation strengthened relationships with families in Los Cuadros community. In Kenya, the number of volunteers and interns grew, most significantly with more universities trusting us with their students. The tutoring program in Iki-Riki community in Nigeria is now led by tutors from that community. Boy with a Ball pivoted its Love Your City conference in reaction to the COVID pandemic from being in person to taking place virtually. This allowed for volunteers, team members, and board members from every team to participate in the conference. Boy with a Ball Nigeria not only maintained, but grew despite COVID-19, including holding virtual meetings for volunteers, boys groups, and girls groups during the 5 most severe months of the pandemic in the country. We were able to launch a boys group for the first time in history. And Boy with a Ball global team members, Rocky and Nina, give birth to a beautiful baby girl, Jubilee Lewis.
Thanks, Roger. Next, we'll be hearing from Brian Ramirez from San Antonio.
A volunteer on the Costa Rica team named Iemi from the Potter's Wheel Association made a significant donation to help pay off the community center in Los Cuadros, Costa Rica. People who have known us around Nicaragua friends and former volunteers have approached us on different occasions to donate books, school supplies, and masks because they understand the power and impact of Love Your City. In Kenya, the number of families we visit in our weekly Love Your City walkthroughs is growing, as well as the miracles, testimonies of what God is doing in their lives. New team members were added to the Boy with the Ball San Antonio's team. We added 2 site directors in Nigeria and the farm in Udi. The team in Kenya was able to reconnect 6 street kids back to their families. The Udi team in Nigeria developed a successful tutoring program with 120 students who were out of school due to the pandemic.
Thanks, Brian.
And next, we have one of the global stories from the last 20 years. This is one of our origin stories from 2009, and another global board member, Ed Liebenthal, will be reading for us.
With Sue.
Are we in?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning. 2009 was a particularly difficult for the families of 9 students living on the island of Ometepe in Nicaragua. Difficult weather left them without the crops they needed to survive, and as a result, trying to feed each person in the house became their central challenge. Keeping kids in school had to fall by the wayside. In the midst of the crisis, the young people came to Boy with a Ball's regional director, Josue Garcia, who was visiting the island to train pastors with Dr. Leroy Curtis. The students shared their stories and told Josue that they knew he was part of a youth development organization. He would have to help them. Josue, knowing the organization didn't have extra funds, told the students there was little hope. The organization at that moment only had 1 team in Costa Rica and 1 in San Antonio. He told them that the only thing they could do was to each write letters that he would carry back to the team to see what they would say. Just as Josue predicted, the team told him there was just no way for us to help. In late February of 2010, in response to receiving yet another set of letters from these same persistent students, Boy with a Ball Executive Director Jamie Johnson traveled by bus, taxi, and ferry with Josue to arrive at the island around 7 p.m. on a Sunday evening. As the 2 men arrived at a local pastor's house in the dark, they walked onto a porch where the students had been waiting for several hours. Jamie asked them to each tell where they were in their studies, what their dreams were, and what kind of help was necessary to help them stay in school and graduate. One by one, the students laid out their cases, each one speaking with sincerity and passion, each one refusing to settle for quitting. In the end, Jamie and Josue offered the group a deal. Boy with a Ball would head back to look for the finances necessary for these students to go to school in exchange for the students returning to the island once a month to be trained as a Boy with a Ball team that could turn and help other Nicaraguan young people. The students agreed without hesitation. On Monday night, April 19th, 2010, Western Union's Foundation Program Director, Tony Tapia, sent an email giving us the news. They were giving us the money we would need to help the students. They could go to school. And with that, El Niño y la Bola Nicaragua was born, and so was Boy with a Ball Global. Now with 3 teams, we realized that we would have to learn how to help support 2 original teams and additional teams that would grow across the world.
Next, we'll be hearing from Frank Ogat in Kenya.
Good morning, everyone. Last year, the world came to a standstill as it was ravaged by COVID-19. For the first time, schools were closed all over the world. For many students, that meant the end of their education and a premature entrance into the workforce, among other things. Rise in teenage pregnancy, drug abuse spikes, increase in crime rate, homelessness, isolation, and the risk of an entire generation being lost. Kawangware, one of the risk neighborhoods within the outskirts of Nairobi, was not spared either. This was evident from the mainstream news and reports were receiving while on home visit. Most parents had lost their jobs and had so much more to worry about than their teenage children. On the other hand, the children were missing so many things, including tuition, that their parents could not afford. Within Kawangware, there was a lot of confusion and mayhem. Young people needed someone to focus on them and lead them. If adequate measures were not taken, it meant that several teens would have not be able to go back to school when school resumed. The community and the country were losing upcoming leaders, and the entire generation was on the verge of being lost. Despite the challenges, there was a possibility of creating a powerful movement of young people to make the change. There was an opportunity to reach, empower, and engage the teens to be catalysts of change. There was an opportunity to create and develop leaders who will be able to make decisions and say no to peer pressure. Leaders who will be able to go back to the community and create a positive ripple effect. Leaders who will respect human rights, stand up, and be the champion of change. It was essential to go out into the neighborhood and school week after week and build relationships across the country. We went out to the community to invite them to the Change Makers program, and the number grew steadily. Our students started to bring friends, and the community members said that their kids were getting into trouble. So we said, send them over. Then other kids got the word, and the parents in the church begged us to let their kids join too. Within a short time, we had over 150 young people regularly showing up for the sense of the community, a desire to be together and to grow. We hired teachers that were out of the work, no unemployment there, to come teach, tutor, and fight with us to make sure this pandemic will not take our city. Our street scholarship program transformed into change makers, and the change is being seen. Instead of boredom, getting into trouble, or falling into hopelessness, students from school found rich friendship and grew to become leaders. The education, albeit informally, and they will start the next year empowered rather than devastated. This is a movement that grew, and the most of the change makers turned into volunteers joining our team for the Love Your City workforce.
And next we have a story from Afeni Aneke from Nigeria.
Afeni, you're muted.
Good morning, everyone. In the midst of COVID-19 during the fall of 2020, an assistant principal at a local high school in Lawrenceville, Georgia, sent out an email distress call about a group of 25 ninth graders he was concerned about. Where online school had made things nearly impossible for half of his school student body, this group of more than 24 students were in danger of watching distant learning end their academic careers. The assistant principal's call for help was answered by a Boy with a Ball Atlanta board member, Alan Hoskin. Hoskin took the administrator's email and forwarded to anyone who he thought would care. Within a few weeks, he had convened more than a dozen community leaders. Boy with a Ball trained these community partners and local church leaders on family engagement, and they deployed several teams to carry out a targeted version of Love Your City for these 25 struggling young people. As the relationships grew, the narrative for these 25 began to change. While some still dropped out of school, several of them saw their paths change positively. This community partnership made it possible for us to launch the Velocity Peer Mentoring Program at Central Gwinnett High School. Many of the original 25 students joined Velocity and we are trained to be transformational leaders and mentors. Their families were woven together by the impact of love and intentional friendship. Community leaders and churches were transformed by allowing them to be of consequence to their surrounding neighborhoods. In a moment of tremendous potential loss, heroes arose and lives were changed.
Not by our might, our strength, wealth, or even brave deeds. Not by our power, our abilities or talents or capacities, but by His Spirit, His breath, His invisible hand, working and changing everything. 20 years ago, our story began in San Antonio with a young, hopeful group gathered around an impossible, improbable vision. It is now year 8 in Atlanta and year 5 in Boston. Our story in the United States is a story of difficulty first, followed by His breakthrough. From that first moment where we dreamt of teams like leagues of superheroes, to today where we dream of watching Him do it again for the next young person, for one more family, for another city. In every turn we have seen miracles, even when it seemed to us there was no way forward. He always speaks, and with His voice, He makes a way. In Atlanta this year, we were called on by a school in our city. They said that half of their freshmen were failing, and it looked like the beginning of a lost generation. So we went to the school and started Velocity, with 25 hurting students, disconnected, broken, and alone. Across the country, we faced the potential for a generation lost by the vacancy of school and structure and leaders. The year required agility and open-handedness and change. Of the thousands of young people, not a single life was changed by our hands or our ideas. It has always been Him and His invisible Spirit bringing visible breakthrough. Those 25 students in Atlanta became a community, and they grew. We witnessed their beginning, and we trust the Lord for what He will do next. There is a growing team of young leaders on the south side of San Antonio that is fighting to weave together every single part of their community to lead a new generation into stories of breakthrough as the Lord first leads them. There is a leader in Boston who lives among some of the nation's greatest promise. Yet Ivy League answers often miss the lives of immigrants and disconnected youth. We dream of a day that historic neighborhood witnesses the love of God in and through every person, immigrant and native, to create new hope, new friendships, and a new way forward. In every city in the U.S., we find ourselves where we so often do, up against the impossible, waiting for His voice. We dream, too, that every city one day will have a team that yearns for the Lord to show them the way, for their neighborhoods and businesses and schools, to love each other, so that the future of those places is one of hope and of change. Of course, this is impossible, improbable. But above all, we have faith that comes from our story, for all the days ahead where we find ourselves waiting for the Lord to speak.
Next, we will hear from Barak Obiando in Kenya. Barak, you're muted.
Good morning, everyone. From the Costa Rica team, added 4 new core team member, Diana, Daniela, and Jonathan, Alexandra, and Rafael. In collaboration with Covenant Church Mobile and Covenant Life Church Boy with a Ball, Atlanta, shifted the camp of Overcomer to be semi-virtual event which allow young people from around the country to participate in camp from their own city. In July 2020, Boy with a Ball, Nicaragua helped Don Ramo, a man in the community who lived alone and repair a shoe. We created a poster to promote his business, and as a result, he has managed to repair his house, build a bathroom and a connection of running water for the first time. St. Antonio had their first successful fundraising campaign, gaining 30 new donors. Boy with the Ball, Boston, was able to relaunch Love Your City in the Franklin Field House complex in Dochenas. In February, signature relationship have already been established in Shorten. The Boy with the Ball global team saw God above through deliverance, baptism in Holy Spirit, critical spiritual breakthrough, spiritual maturity, and health for several global team members, including the restoration of Christine hand to near normal function after a severe burn. In Kenya, we now have more program participants and community members volunteering in our program and join our team, allowing the people we are touching to now turn and to become leaders in their own community. Yeah.
And next, we'll hear from Kim Hackbarth.
Kim, you're muted.
Thanks. Costa Rica created a computer class this year for residents of the Los Cuadros slum. There are 8 young people attending on a regular basis. The Nicaraguan Boy with the Ball team is connected to even more families during our weekly Love Your City walkthroughs. Ifeanyi, who is a Nigerian assistant country director, got married to the love of his life. San Antonio's team saw Love Your City grow as we made connections with industry leaders, further rooting us into the city. With the help of Katie Williams, Boy with the Ball in Atlanta saw its English as a second language class grow from being 4 inconsistent students to 12 to 15 students who quickly began to function as a relationally rich small group. In San Antonio, this year led to the start of a girls' small group in the neighborhood where we work, and to the start of a young professionals committee to engage and foster community across the city. Costa Rica's Harvey, one of the young leaders from the Los Cuadros community, came up with the idea of connecting younger leaders from different Boy with the Ball locations, and we had our first Young Leaders session at this year's Love Your City Conference 2021 as a result.
Next, we will hear from Donna Hyatt with a story from Nigeria.
Thanks, Christine. When we came face to face with challenges that test our growth level, every part of our training begins to matter, such as a daily playing field that helps us grow our strength and living a life full of the power of the Holy Spirit. On the 8th of this month, we gathered our core team at Ifeanyi's house where we were to dine, pray, and spend the night together. There was no script to how the night would be spent, but we prayed that God would grant us an overflow of his presence and an outpouring of the Holy Spirit. As we waited for dinner to be ready, we retrieved from the archives some videos from the Boy with a Ball Conference 2016. It was powerful, the effect it had on the team, especially Jim Newsom's testimony, how he was saved and how he began to love sinners and lead them to the Lord. We were no longer in doubt if we were called to do the same with communities God had given us and the young people he has entrusted to our care. As we turned to worship and pray around 11:30 p.m., it wasn't just songs and words. It was a time of intimacy with God. And we cried unto God for the infilling of the Holy Spirit, deliverance, and healing. Just like in the Acts of the Apostles, God's presence came fully upon us. And for the first time, one of the team members Ephioma, who only joined the team late last year, began to prophesy and minister to the other team members present. Another team member began to cough and manifest, and we laid hands and prayed for total deliverance. She could not speak that night, but in the morning, she opened up to share that she had seen a hand with a spoon that was feeding her, and it was a spoonful of rice and soldier ants mixed together. When the prophecy came, she started coughing and was able to cough out everything as we prayed. It was clear that we had experienced a touch of the supernatural.
Next, we have another origin story coming from one of the original Boys of Ball founding team members, Beth Hernandez.
Hi, guys. Good to be here. For many of you who have heard Jamie's stories over the years about the early days of Boys of Ball, it may come as a surprise that I was hesitant to join. I loved being around Jamie and Kathy as friends. I believed in their vision for kids and participated in a great deal of the meetings and events. But joining meant a time commitment, a heart commitment, and a step outside of a boundary of safety that I was not sure I wanted to follow through with. The Matrix was a revolutionary movie at the time. And if you've seen it, you will recall the scene where Neo gets to pick a red pill or a blue pill. I recall feeling like this was my choice in being part of Boy with a Ball. It came at the cost of my whole life. In 2001, after a time of prayer and fasting, I made the jump down the rabbit hole. One of my big resistors at this time were my parents. They saw Boy with a Ball as an unorganized group of unwise kids that would take their daughter to Costa Rica eventually and throw her into unsafe circumstances. Additionally, ministering to young people often meant reaching out to my students. I felt a great deal of pressure from my administration to separate my professional life from my personal life. Every decision I made to participate in outreach felt like a step of defiance to the world I grew up in and the world I worked in. It is under this backdrop that I share my story. One of my students, JC Cassiano, needed a mentor. His mother was at her wit's end with him, but saw that he respected me. She asked me to meet with her and JC at a park. We talked for a long time about the direction of his life. I told her that he needed to know Jesus. She was a Jehovah's Witness and very wary of my belief in Jesus as God, but gave me permission to hang out with JC and talk with him about the Bible. I got him a Bible and shared with him and his friends about the Lord and just hung out with them, but I knew what JC really needed was a good male role model. Jamie agreed to come out and play basketball with JC and his friends. I set up a meeting time at the courts near my school. My parents saw this as an unwise move. They didn't think it was appropriate for Jamie to come out there with me. They were afraid it would give a wrong impression of my involvement with him as a single woman. I remember saying to my dad, this is a field ripe for the harvest and it needs a harvest hand. I cannot stand by and not work the field just because I'm a single woman. Would it be more appropriate for my dad or my brother to be there? He said, yes. And I said, then come with me. And he said, I cannot, I have another commitment. And my brother was at the Air Force Academy in Colorado. I told my parents, well, then this is what I've got. And I went and met Jamie with fear and trembling that I had defied my parents. I could be giving people the wrong impression in my relationship with Jamie, and I could be jeopardizing my job. I only went because I knew the Lord was in it, and I knew his love for JC. That day, JC brought his girlfriend, Samantha Guerrero. She and I talked while the guys played basketball. It was a fun day, and it seemed in the end that maybe the biggest impact had more to do with me choosing to follow Jesus and trusting his voice over my fears. Over time, I lost relationship with JC, and not long after that, hadn't heard from him in years. But 10 years later, he called me as an adult to tell me about his family and his work and thank us for being there. And what surprised me even more is that just recently, Samantha and another former student of mine, Nancy Gill, reached out to me and asked me to come out to dinner. We met for dinner, and Samantha asked me if I remembered her. I recalled for her that day we talked at the basketball courts, and she felt loved and cared for. I had an opportunity to pray with these women who were facing challenges at their jobs and with their kids. What Boy with a Ball meant for me was I had an extended family of people committed to to loving their neighbors. I was not alone in the mission field. In the early days of Boy with a Ball, we didn't have a plan other than to just be there for kids. But the kids who never had an adult be there felt like it was monumental. I love to see how Boy with a Ball has grown in its purpose and outreach. The JCs and Samanthas of today will have structures in place that they can count on while building those deep relationships that will impact their whole lives.
Thank you, Beth. Next, we'll be hearing from Joey Johnson with a story from San Antonio.
Hey guys. We first met Valerie as a 17-year-old who had just become a mother, causing her to abandon school and figure out what was next. We had been working with her younger brother through our summer camps and outreach programs. She had moved away shortly after we met her, but recently returned to the apartments where she grew up. She was surprised to see us still working in her neighborhood and quickly brought us into the hopes and dreams she had for her future. Throughout the pandemic, Valerie initiated a tutoring center for her family out of her home. And this week, we celebrated her finishing high school and together submitted her application for college. She plans to study early childhood development to work with young kids. We are excited to love and know Valerie in the next season of reaching her dreams.
When the Lord seizes our hearts, He changes everything. Nothing old can stay. We are made entirely new. In Latin America, our story is one of great cost, of revolution, and of loss. Our story is also one of His power and freedom, as we've been given leaders of different generations who have been freed by the Lord and forged by the fire of living out His calling to live the life He lived. The Lord's kingdom is different and upside down in ways where great costs leads to great freedom and deep loss leads to deeper wisdom. We have had a year in Latin America where 2 neighboring teams have witnessed the Lord's love for them, even in the midst of great trial, even in the midst of great pain. Where our communities were once disjointed and scattered, our many small groups are now filled with young lives who are learning what it takes to fight for each other and their future. Our teams are populated with growing leaders, some seasoned, some new, who are learning that the Lord changes lives by weaving them into His ways of difficulty and then breakthrough. The Lord is merciful and faithful and kind. We stand as witnesses of that truth in Latin America. As we stand in a new year, grateful and humble for all the Lord has done, with open hands we wait with anticipation of what the Lord will do next. We have hope for a day where the story keeps growing, so that the story is one of 2, 3, 4 communities set free, as all of Latin America turns to see by what power and what love our local teams are sent. We dream that there would be a team in every country, from Mexico to Argentina. Teams like those in Costa Rica and Nicaragua. Teams who are loved by the Lord and love to do His work. And then we dream that every young person from the Caribbean Sea to the South Pacific would come to know He who made them and the purpose for which they are made. And as we continue to go out and take our small steps to achieve these very, very big dreams, we go with faith that comes from knowing deeply the promises we receive and He who first did the promising.
Reading our next selection of accomplishments is Virginia Smith.
Hi, everyone. Kenya has been able to create relationships with 3 local churches, and we are currently equipping and training their youth leaders. We are also seeing the possibility of opening new sites by the end of the year. Boy with the Ball Nicaragua is seeing new young leaders rise up, including 3 committed volunteers who have grown a lot in the last few months and are now planning and leading youth program activities in the community. Historic school board member and community leader, Miss Louise Radloff, agreed to join our Boy with the Ball's Board of Advisors in Atlanta. The team in Nigeria celebrated their 6-year anniversary in September of 2020. The global team in Atlanta launched the first Velocity Banquet to celebrate the success of mentoring programs in the past year, which gathered many key regional leaders. Oge, who has been a core team member in Nigeria and leader for the past 3 years, graduated from university as a teacher.
Next, we have board member Karen Woodruff.
Hi, good morning. Boy with the Ball Global saw the growth of the most new non-velocity mentoringship and discipleship relationships that it has seen in its existence. In Costa Rica, the youth group in the Los Cuadros community now has more than 40 young people and has grown so large that they have to hire minibuses to facilitate travel to and from the meetings. Boy with the Ball Global team members Virginia Smith and Maria Bartolucci graduated from college. Tutoring became an integral part of Boy with the Ball San Antonio, reaching young people during the pandemic. In the midst of COVID, Boy with the Ball Global had its strongest financial year, capped off by our most successful appeal yet. When we reopened the tutoring program in August 2020, we had 3 groups from different communities in Nicaragua and launched a high school group. Joey and Molly Johnson from the Boy with the Ball Global team stepped into the role as youth pastors at Covenant Life Church as the young group grew and flourished.
Next up, reading a story from Nicaragua is Nina Byers.
All the time we meet young people with a lot of talent, with a lot of commitment and a lot in their hands to give. Our team is full of volunteers who truly have a heart of exceptional service. Yasser, a 4th-year political science and international relations student, is a passionate volunteer in the tutoring program. Last year, he met Jeremy and Saul, 2 second graders who couldn't read. They did poorly on their exams, but not because they couldn't do what they were asked, because they didn't know how to read the sentences. Yasser asked us if he could work with them every Saturday in order to teach them to read. And despite the long interruption we had due to the pandemic, at the end of 2020, Jeremy and Saul had learned how to read, and Yasser had his heart full of joy and gratitude. This year, Yasser again asked to work every Saturday with the children who had reading difficulties. Andrea, Emil, and Solani and Nelson are the new challenges for Yasser this year. Sometimes we are asked how 2 hours of tutoring a week can make a difference, but we know that it is not about the long or short time, but about the quality and love that is shared. The news that the children had learned to read was the icing on the cake at the end of the year for Yasser, who, like everyone, went through many difficulties, but made his heart happy. And we are happy and with expectation of what we can give and do this year with the children of the community of the city we love.
Next, we have Rebecca Yoder here in Atlanta.
In 2019, Boy with a Ball launched its Read, Write to Lead summer literacy program in the Norcross, Georgia community, where we do our Love Your City walkthroughs. The previous year, we piloted a 1-week version. As we looked at the program in 2020, we knew it would take more than just 1 week focusing on reading and writing to combat the damaging effects of COVID and virtual learning on the kids in the community. The community has close to 800 young people who largely come from families who recently immigrated to the United States. As schools shifted to virtual classes,
These students not only missed out on in-person classes and interactions with their teachers and classmates, but they also missed out on the chance to be in an all-English environment where they could practice the language they need to survive in their new home country. With that in mind, we expanded Read, Write to Lead to be a 3-week program where the students got to strengthen foundational skills by reading books and playing literacy games. Local bookstores joined the cause by donating hundreds of books, which allowed us to send each student home with a book of their choice at the end of every day. Over the course of the 3 weeks, students also had the chance to plan, write, and illustrate their own books, which they were so excited to share on the last day of the program. In addition to serving 70 students during the program, we also recruited over 100 volunteers from local churches, schools, and businesses, including 50 middle and high school students from Perimeter Church's Rush Conference.
Faith is the confidence of things hoped for, the assurance of that unseen. Faith drives, faith leads, faith grows. It is the thing that causes us to move from where we are to where we're going. There are 5,000 kilometers between Enugu and Nairobi, and in that stretch of space, there are 2 teams and 5 sites who lived out a year that required faith. It is easy to do what you do and continue to do it well. It is challenging to be faced with something new and know what to do at all. As schools began to close, as hope withdrew into the shadows, as the last year unfolded before us, there were great needs that could only be met by something new. New things require great faith. In Kenya this year, there was no school, so young people began to fill their time with other options. They left school for work, teen pregnancy rose, and many young people gave up on the idea that they would go back to school at all. With the absence of school, we knew we would need something creative that had never been done. So we started the Changemakers, a group given to school and the development of young leaders. As word got out, parents raced to the gates, asking for the chance for their child to be part of this new thing. On the opposite coast, in a farming village in Nigeria, one woman looked around and saw young people who never had access to school at all. As a teacher, she knew that they needed to learn, so she took the opportunity to teach their letters and maths, and along the way taught them the sacrificial love it took to be leaders. When the school first began, it was simply for a few, but as word traveled out, neighbors came to ask for school for their young people too. There is no shortage of creativity to our story in Africa. It goes beyond schools or any one person's good thoughts. Love Your City has emerged, and across that 5,000-kilometer stretch are streams of creative life and innovative ideas. And we have faith for the days that will come soon in Africa. We have hope for more and more innovation and creativity and inspiration that comes from the Lord into the neighborhoods of Kenya and Nigeria. We have faith for the width and depth of the teams that will grow and expand their impact across their countries. Of course, we have faith too for the day that distance between Enugu and Nairobi is filled with many, many teams creatively caring and going out into their neighborhoods, in their cities, to change the future for their nations. All that has happened in Africa so far is because of the way the Lord creatively grabs our hearts and leads us into the new, the renewed, and the breakthrough. And into the next part of our story, we are assured we'll need faith, and we are confident that the Lord will provide it.
Next up, another set of accomplishments read by Emeka Ude in Nigeria.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emeka. Costa Rica is training for young leaders in their understanding of biblical Christianity in order to grow them as key leaders in Love Your City. All 4 of these leaders have grown up in Boy with a Ball since they were children. After getting married, Mr. Obinna and Mrs. Favor Oji started the farm team in Nigeria with a tutoring center in early 2019. Then in September, they were able to successfully transition the tutoring center to a kindergarten to 6th grade school, which currently serves 70 students. Boy with a Ball San Antonio celebrated the high school graduation of one of our Velocity mentors who started as a mentee in 6th grade. 3 young Nicaraguan high school students who have been tutored by us over the past 5 years are now volunteering in the tutoring program with elementary school children. Perimeter Church continued to scale their partnership from one-time gifts to recurring giving to helping grow exposure for Boy with a Ball in Atlanta. In Costa Rica, the Iglesia del Pacto Nueva Esperanza Church shared with us the keys to their building to be able to house activities during the pandemic. To help combat the learning loss caused at the beginning of the shutdown in Atlanta, the team created a mobile library which provided books for kids in the community in order to develop literacy skills in the community.
Next, we have Alyssa Mcnewson in California.
Good morning. Boy with a Ball, San Antonio said in a new board member, Ashley Powell, who was a former volunteer and a team member who first got involved with Boy Web over 10 years ago. Costa Rica has grown Love Your City by building closer relationships with young people and families, by growing faith-filled leaders, and by recruiting volunteers who give each day what they have towards the bigger calling to love the community. Boy with a Ball in Atlanta saw growth and development for core volunteers who are being equipped to be catalytic leaders, such as Alex, Katie, and Priscilla. Boy with a Ball San Antonio saw community leaders, including our very own students, rise up to lead alongside the teams. First Class Eye Care got involved with Love Your City in Atlanta by offering free eye exams, glasses, and lenses to every community member we work with. Jamie and Kathy made a 3-week trip to Kenya in the midst of COVID-19 to witness firsthand how God was helping the team there, including with the Changemakers group, implementing Love Your City, Barack's wedding, and the growth of the team. Boy with a Ball celebrated its 20th anniversary on February 14th with a joyful Facebook Live birthday party.
And next up with a story from San Antonio is global board member Sue Liebenthal.
Good morning. Selena began her story with Boy with a Ball as a 7th grade mentee in our Velocity Dropout Prevention Program. Growing up in a neighborhood that was ridden with poverty, maleducation, and high crime, Selena had overwhelming circumstances to navigate growing up and planning for her future. After 3 years of being a mentee, she went on to serve as a high school mentor and is 2 weeks away from graduating. Over the past year, Selena has joined the team's work behind the scenes of a program serving her own neighborhood. She has discovered what it is to touch purpose and life beyond current circumstances, but is being challenged to implement Love Your City in her own life. When our global team came down to celebrate 20 years of Boy with a Ball, Selena was connected to the real, palpable life of the Spirit through the words of Roger Hyatt and the actions of our teams and leaders. This made the life and love streaming from the Lord tangible for her. Our team's responsibility in Selena's life has shifted from making sure this middle school girl can fight to finish high school to helping her grow as a young leader in her city for her future.
Next, we have board member Gord Green from Canada.
Well, good morning. It's wonderful to be here. As most of you know, we had a community center in Costa Rica that was given to us by God several years ago. But at the beginning of last year, we were faced with a very sad situation. The beloved El Triangulo community, where the building existed, had been demolished because the residents of that community had been relocated throughout the country. Previously, we'd been working about 50% of our time in Los Cuadros, but that was pushed to 100% when this El Triangulo community had been destroyed. So we began to see a need for a place to meet, because the building where we worked was sometimes busy. For example, one day we came to English class and there was a party going on. It was raining, so we had to go out to some lady's house to teach the class. It wasn't ideal. So we began to see the need for a place, and we began by faith to look for a community center. We needed a central place, somewhere that was safe, a beautiful center, so that when the children came, they'd feel comfortable. God helped us find a great building, and we were also able to negotiate a good price. The man told us that the man that owned the building and sold it to us, Don Pedro, had been like an angel. He said, "I'll sell you the house and you can pay me for it over 2 years without interest, but you have to give me a down payment." We were so excited, but we said, where are we going to get that money from? Then a friend of Josue's son named Stephen, who was an English teacher in China, came to Costa Rica in those days. The global team was with us at the time, and Stephen joined the group. To serve, he washed dishes, cleared the table, helped in the kitchen. If there was any rough work to be done in the community that needed to be done, he was right there. The day before he left, he shared with Josue, "I've seen what Boytheball does, and I want to donate $10,000 for the house's down payment." Well, that's when the miracle just started becoming a reality. We used that $10,000 for the down payment, and we were left with a debt of $35,000 to pay in 24 months. We thank God for the donors, which God brought forward, which included the Atlanta Church, the California Church, the Global Team, David Garcia, and many other families. Within a few months, we will have the full payment for that community center. It's a miracle of God because we didn't have the money, but God said to us right at the beginning of the year, "I am enough. I am enough. Today it is missing, but tomorrow there will be abundance. I am doing something new. They cannot see it, but I am opening roads in the desert and waters in the dry land." God has been so faithful to us in Costa Rica.
And next, we have a story from the Global Team in Atlanta read by Jen Gomez.
In the spring of 2013, Jamie and Kathy were visiting Atlanta for a wedding when Covenant Life Church's pastor, John Duke, and his wife, Ellen, asked to meet with them for breakfast. During their time together, Pastor John looked across the table and said, "You guys," he meant Boytheball, "can be based anywhere. We have a hub airport and we're the spiritual family that put you two back together. I'm not going to be here forever, and this church is going through a leadership change. Your best friend, Chris Hyatt, is going to be the next pastor. You two have an uncommon friendship, and he's going to need you here with him. We're your family, and we need you here now. It's time for you to come home. What do I have to do? Prophesy to make this happen?" And just like that, God moved Boytheball to be based in Atlanta and into a partnership with Covenant Life Church that has set us on an adventure together to rework what God would have churches be in this time. Together, we're in a journey of discovery to learn how the church can change the world.
What a impactful time. Thank you to each person who shared. Thank you to all of the teams that contributed stories. And then thank you to all of the readers who jumped in. It's an amazing thing to sort of see the weaving together that the Lord has worked, both in some of those 20-year origin stories, and then all of the other stories from different teams all over the world just from this past year. I mean, it's a little bit overwhelming just to put them all together and hear what the Lord has done. So we're so thankful. We praise the Lord. We give thanks. We do believe that it is by things like this, the word of our testimony, that we're able to triumph over the enemy and launch into the fullness of purpose that God has for us. We hope and pray that this time served as that for you as well, both to recognize, but also to be equipped for what's next. We're thankful for the chance to look back, but then know that it is just as a way to prepare us to head back in tomorrow and next week, filled with faith about what the Lord will do.
Yeah, I think moments like this and exercises like this are so good and so important, because the next time we find ourselves in a really tough spot where it just doesn't seem like it's going to work, where there just isn't enough money in the bank, or you just don't know what to do next, go back to this list and look at all of the things the Lord has done in just 1 year. In just 1 year, we've seen hundreds of things, hundreds of moments, thousands of moments where the Lord came in and did something, where he made something out of nothing, where water came out of rocks in the desert. And so turn to this list and say, Lord, we repent and do it again. Use us again, do something again. We need another miracle, because he still does miracles today.